against communities that are very much having violence done upon them, like immigrants, trans people, women, whatever. You can see like there are very clear effects. People do what he says to do. The things he advocates for are actually getting done in large part by the regime. So I don't know. It's kind of a gray area with that, but no, I'm against political assassinations generally.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good precedent. I also think that they're more likely look at the amount of right wing violence that's done, the amount of right wing domestic terrorism is so overwhelming. I don't think it's smart to, when you already have a belligerent, violent population who are basically already in a death cult, who worship violence and retribution, and who are so hateful. I don't think it makes sense to meet them on their level. I think that's going to make us all worse overall.
See, I don't necessarily think differently about it, but I feel differently about it because a big part of me is thinking like I kind of feel safer almost if the amount of right wing violence is met with a proportionate response. Because it's like, oh, it's not just that we're a bunch of doormats who are being beaten over and over and over and over by this group of people who don't care about rules, don't care about decorum, don't care about anything like that. There
Okay,
is
well,
resistance.
that's sure, but it wouldn't be possible for us to meet them, right? Because they have more firepower. They have the government, right? Like when like Charlie Kirk who had the year of the president. Um, it's not like he's just some militia somewhere, and it's like a gang of Antifa super soldiers versus a gang of like MAGA neo Nazis or whatever. They're in the government. They have all technology. They have unlimited resources. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for now.
That's what it is. I mean, and this is something the left has critically failed over and over on over the last 60 years. It's that we don't understand that in order to win a battle, we need to understand the playing field. We need to fight a battle by the rules that it's being fought by, sort of. And right now, we're disadvantaged, and we need to fix that. We don't have a strong understanding of, I mean, the Democratic Party has a very weak understanding of, I think, people who vote for them. Uh, and so they're not an equal force, basically. They don't have the support that the Republicans do right now, that Trump does specifically. I think that if it was any other Republican against the Democrats, I think they would do better, at least in when it comes to federal politics. But right now, there's no power in Congress. There's no power in the courts. There's no way to check the power of Trump, who is on the absolute warpath against the citizens here, who's been invading cities with the National Guard, with the Marines. There's not really anything we can do about that now. Um, we have to find some other way to get around that. And I don't think assassinating Charlie Kirk is going to bring us any closer to that.
You know what might though is assassinating the president and vice president.
I mean, that's also kind of silly because guess who becomes president after you assassinate JD Vance?
Probably some Republican.
Mike Johnson. Guess who becomes president after you assassinate Mike Johnson?
I don't
Marco
know. I've
Rubio.
no
Guess who
idea.
becomes
Oh,
president
okay.
after you assassinate Marco Rubio? Scott Bessent. There's like 20 people you would have to kill to not get somewhat like an evil Nazi fuck in there.
Well, you
So I
know
don't know what
what?
to tell you, man. It's like
I
the way
don't know if the
that's not a
precedent.
strategy for defeating them.
I don't know if the precedent set by Trump is going to carry on with every Republican after him or not. Like the rule
Um,
breaking precedent.
I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't, and I also don't think we should assume that. Like, I don't think there's any good like Republicans notoriously will violate the Constitution. We'll have to get reined in by the courts. Um, Trump among Republicans, Trump is exceptionally an egregious example of that. Um, this term, I think he's already come close to beating his first term record. I would have to look at the new numbers after this month, but uh, the courts do their job and check his power until it gets to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court, for whatever reason, overrules the constitutional rulings of the lower courts. And that's a pattern we've seen play out again and again. So I think like a couple things have to happen in order to fix the situation we're in. Um, the easiest way to solve the issue of the legislature being Republican controlled is at the midterms next year. Um, if we can get the legislature and if we can get people willing to fight back, if it's shown to be popular enough, I think that they could run at that point on reigning in the Supreme Court. And what they can do that in a number of ways through court packing, like FDR threatened to do back during the Great Depression when the Supreme Court tried to block all the New Deal legislation. They can they can do they can do it by writing in laws that exclude judicial review that the Supreme Court can't rule on directly. So there's a few ways that they can combat the Supreme Court. Um, but it does hinge on getting the legislature. We're not going to be able to take back the court without the legislature because the fascists are going to be in there until they die. Clarence Thomas, is going to be in there. He's old. They're all old, but they're probably going to be around for long enough to do, for too long. We're not going to be able to undo the damage by, with before they die, basically. If we let them keep the court for another few terms, they're going to set us back further and further and further.
But
So I do think that's
does
the
the court even reign in Trump at all, though? The Supreme Court. I mean, never mind the
they
idea
don't
of them.
now. They could. They did
But
in the
could
first
they?
term. And
I mean, yeah, in the first term.
tr-
But could they now?
so I mean it's Trump could violate their rulings and he has done that. But I mean it's better to have that resistance than to have them just unanimously allowing whatever he wants to do to break any constitutional law. Um,
That is
it's
true. A
possible
persistent
that
resistance.
yeah, so it's possible that Trump, because he controls the military, can just do whatever he wants and disregard any court ruling. But I do think that can be reined in through other means. And I think that Congress and the court working together can work to undo all the damage that Trump has done to reverse a lot of these appointments that he's replaced with loyalists, to rein in his control of the military, maybe 25th Amendment him. You could impeach him for a number of things. I don't think it's out of par to think that Trump will be impeached if we take back the House because he's the only president to be impeached twice in one term, right? I don't think it's outlandish to think he'll be impeached again. And if we can take back the Senate too, then we can convict him of impeachment and remove him from office. If that can happen early enough after midterms, then JD Vance will take over and have maybe a year in there, but that's not a lot of time to do anything. So I do think there are ways that we can critically hinder the administration and what they're doing, but it really hedges on surviving until the midterms, making sure the midterms still happen, and winning the midterms. And if we can get to that point electorally, that's going to be our best weapon against what's going on to stop it. Um, the bigger battle is in the media space and in the streets, really. It's getting the message out. It's defeating the propaganda. It's showing people how the current regime is affecting them economically and in other ways. So there's a lot of work to do, I think, on everyone's part, every individual citizen. If they care about this country and if they care about what's happening, they can all do their part to resist it, to work against it. And that's going to be a big part of it too, not just electorally, but through, social mechanisms like that.
Are there any circumstances under which you would support assassinating the president?
I mean, I don't support that. Like, I'm not gonna. It's sort of like I don't really care if it happens. I think it would be better for the country if Donald Trump was dead. I don't think that the person who did it should, face any charges or whatever. I don't encourage someone to do that though. I am anti assassinating any specific person.
See, I feel like I'm kind of inverse in that I do think the person who does it should be charged and convicted. However, I'm not
Sure.
necessarily against him doing it.
I mean, you have to look at it like there is a war right now that the Trump administration, the people behind Project 2025 and the oligarchs are actively waging against the country. And I don't really think that any force that resists that is necessarily an offensive move. I think that there's a good argument that anything done is done in self-defense,
Sure.
but I don't support anyone assassinating anyone. I also don't think, again, I don't think this is the way to fix our problems. I don't think it will fix our problems. I think it'll push us further and further into a police state, into a more violent world, into a more restrictive and oppressive world. I don't think there's ever been a time in history where political assassinations have made things better. That's never been the way we've gotten out of the situation we're in historically.
I'd have to think about that.
Sure. Hitler wasn't assassinated. What are you talking about?
But if Hitler were
Hitler was.
assassinated, I think that would have been good.
I don't. Well, sure, probably, but I mean, like, I don't think that would have stopped the Nazi regime if Hitler
I,
had been assassinated.
I think it
You know,
would have
we
hindered the
the thing
Nazi
with
regime.
Hitler, sure, maybe I don't know, but the thing with Hitler is that we put a lot of blame on these cult leaders, right? We put a lot of blame on Hitler for being the mastermind or the one at the top or whatever. But I mean, there was a whole infrastructure behind Hitler that people had to consciously participate in. There were people all throughout his regime who made individual choices to work towards something to make the Nazi machine as effective as it was and operate the way that it did, to turn that sword against its own people, to commit genocide, and ultimately to fail due to the incompetence with maintaining supply lines. But there is like, there are so many people who are part of that machine that I think that laying all the blame at the head of the leader or pretending like if someone cut the head off, the body would just fall apart. I don't think that's accurate. I think that the Nazis, they were militarily defeated. They were defeated so utterly. They were completely ripped out of power. The same is true of the fascists in Italy. Um, so I don't think like you can see the way that those movements were defeated, right? Versus other authoritarian movements like the USSR, for example, or like that. The defeat of the Soviet Union wasn't some complete military victory. It was like an economic collapse that allowed still people who were part of the leadership in the country to maintain control and to still pretty much do business as usual through corruption and authoritarian repression. I don't think. I mean, the president of Italy is kind of a fascist, maybe a fascist light. I don't think he's anywhere near like an actual fascist, but I don't know. I'd have to look more into that.
I didn't
I
even
know there
know
was
that
something.
Italy had a president.
I know
I
there. Do they not? Is it a prime minister there?
well, they might be one of these countries that has both.
Yeah, maybe
I
prime minister then.
I know that the prime
Um,
minister is a woman who has said kind things about Mussolini.
I remember that. Yeah, so I remember there was some issue there with the mosques. Correct? Is that what you're referring to, Agent Cooper here? I know there was something where like they wouldn't allow mosques to be built in Italy. I don't remember. That was a few years ago though, so that might be what he's referring to. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
do my research on the fly right now. We've got I told Slime we were gonna get to this EDP shit, so we're gonna do that pretty soon. But uh, oh, are you? You're free? Is that what you're saying?
I think that so much was invested in the cult of Hitler as a person that to kill Hitler would have been a huge blow to the confidence of the regime and the country as a whole, and it would have had a huge negative effect, deleterious effect on their efficacy and cohesion, especially if you do it at a decisive moment, like if they're in the middle of the war, you know.
Hmm.
Uh, Um,
Yeah,
so
but they
I,
were
yeah,
only in the war for like the last 6 years of the Nazi of his reign. That was at the end of his reign.
yeah.
So it's like so it's sort of like so maybe I don't know maybe I just don't think a country at war if their leader gets assassinated that's like they're gonna then surrender or whatever like
I'm
I feel
not
like they're
saying
just
they would
gonna
surrender. I'm
take
just
over
saying
and
that their regime would suffer and things might start to crack. Not necessarily
yeah
break
maybe
down entirely, but it would open up
maybe
weaknesses,
so
maybe.
but I can't imagine like Hitler getting assassinated and then them becoming less oppressive and less imperialistic and they I feel like the Holocaust would still continue. I don't know why they would reverse that. There was a whole infrastructure of people, right? Hitler had his Stephen Miller. It wasn't just it wasn't just him. So I don't think like yeah, I mean his second in command there was in the bunker with him when they killed themselves. So
But he was definitely the driving figure. And I don't know,
sure,
it's possible that there's times when, somebody who behaves a certain way when they're number 2 gets to number 1,
right.
and then it's like, well, now that I'm in charge, I can do things
Hmm.
my way, and it might not be exactly the way you expect from their prior behavior.
What we need to do is defeat the ideology and killing one political leader killing and like the great machinery of the death cult that's already there isn't gonna do that. We need to that's the only way this gets fixed, right? Like we can't they're just going to keep on becoming more and more authoritarian because Trump isn't even an ideologue really. I mean, he wants to be an autocrat. He wants to be king and have infinite terms. He probably won't even survive that much longer, but the people who funded him, the people who put him in place, the billionaires like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, the ones who funded his campaign, who are the people who wrote Project 2025, the people who financed the Heritage Foundation. These are all like big, like extremely powerful, resourceful people who have been part of this conspiracy for 50 years to turn America into what it's being turned into, which is like a Christian fascist you know, uh, corporate fiefdom town or whatever. Like it's this dystopian idea that things should be less democratic and more centralized in power, and people shouldn't have rights. That doesn't take precedence over strength of or the safety of the nation or whatever economically is in our interest. So this
But
this
perhaps
conspiracy, this movement,
without their guy who was able to empower them in this way, that opens up an avenue for other
right? But it
interests
wasn't
in the
just
right.
Sure, but it wasn't just Trump who did that, right? Like George W. Bush and Reagan were both examples of this, of presidents who were extremely useful in pushing this agenda forward. Reagan, with the way that he rewrote the tax codes to basically destroy the equity and wealth that was going on from the project from FDR onwards had been to tax the upper classes more to pay for social funding for the infrastructure of our society, and Reagan was the one who did away with all of that, and that was a huge victory for the oligarchy, and it really did give them so much more political power and economic power than they had prior to his administration. And then when Bush is president, uh, with unitary executive theory, with waging illegal wars, with going around Congress to do military action, we're seeing a lot of what Trump is doing is built on what George W. Bush got away with, and they're always pushing the limits of how authoritarian they can be. So I don't think, and Trump, look at Trump's first term, right? Versus now. The reason he's so much more destructive now is because of the infrastructure around him. It's because of the machine around him, not just because of him solely. It's because of all the people staffing his cabinet, because they're all working in conspiracy to do this one goal. So I don't think, again, taking out the head is going to cripple the whole beast. Who knows what the response to that could be? The response to that could be a brutal military crackdown on the citizens. They're already coming after people for their speech. So, who knows? I think that, again, the best way for us to do this is to disempower their movement, which is through taking political power back from them. It's not through violent revolution. It's through changing the zeitgeist of the country. It's through taking back, the revolution is of the mind. What we need is a new American enlightenment. We need to bring back these values that we had, that of American excellence. So that every time a society will go through this sort of renaissance, this new sort of scientific revolution, there's a big move forward and a huge push towards liberalism in government. And I think that that's how we're going to swing back from this, and that's the only way that we're going to move forward with the country in the direction we need it to go. And that's done again through the social movement, through making the argument, through doing the propaganda successfully, from the ground up. And
Well, I
there's
think
that aspect of it. Hmm.
Trump hired all the people in his cabinet, and when you look at Trump, I mean, he's at a point in his life where he's like got nothing left to lose. He's a felon on many counts, and I think that and the
His
assassination
well,
attempt was a huge psychological
yeah,
factor in the breakdown of his scruples at this point, which he already had few to begin with. Uh, but at least when he had his old Bush era cabinet, they could and wanted to hold him back. But I think with Trump, there is a special quality of him as a person where he is able to break down this country's even belief in reason and sanity and things being at all normal to begin with. And so there's this kind of like anything goes thing because of the whole cult of personality that's built up around him. And you can't just replace that with any other schmo who happens to be funded by Peter Thiel and all these people. I think Trump is a very, very important, essential piece in this puzzle. And I just can't help but feel that if he were removed, it would do a lot to, break the puzzle apart.
yeah. I don't know. I don't think Trump didn't cause society to become what it is. I think he's a symptom of it more than anything, and I think it was trending that way for a long time. I think that it's a symptom of this consumer mindset of a lazy sort of disengagement from the public with their government. Um, there was it's sort of it's sort of how we squandered the prosperity of the post World War II world. I think, um, through carelessness on the individual level, by not paying attention, by allowing corruption to seep in more and more in more and more extreme ways, by becoming more religious. After the war, there's to be becoming more nationalist, more conservative. Um, Prior to the 60s, there was, in the 1950s, a lot of this kind of consumer mindset where there were these traditional corporate values that were instilled and that kind of became ingrained in the American psyche as like what ideal America is. And I think that we've had a reaction from that for the last 50 years. And now there's like a, you know, a sort of a reactionary response to that reaction. The pendulum swinging back, some sort of social inertia that's happening. That's been planned, sort of. That's been, like I said, there's been like different pieces that have been put in place since the Heritage Foundation in the 1970s, slowly going after different judges to get us to where we are now. That happens because of careless people not paying attention.
True.
Yeah, I mean, capitalism is sort of to blame, I guess. I think it's more of like a corporate kind of, it's unfettered, unregulated capitalism in our system. And how do you solve that? You don't solve that with a bullet, right? You can't assassinate that. That has to be done away with through procedures, through legislation.
Huh.
You don't think so?
Well, what if we had a lot of bullets and a lot of
So
assassins? A lot of Luigis, let's say.
it's yeah. I mean, it's silly to think. Well, I mean, a lot of Louis like there's a difference between a vigilante working alone and a militia and an army, right?
Yeah.
They have intelligence agencies. They have Palantir. They have the constant violating your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights, right? They have illegal and warrantless wiretapping. They have this great advantage over us militarily. Even if, and I don't, I hope that, I don't think it's a good idea to be looking at this from like the suicidal lens of like, well, let's go to war and die for our freedom. Um, I think that we should try to fight smarter than that. I don't think that we're up against terribly intelligent people. We're just up against very powerful people, but we can see that they're weak and dull in a lot of ways. Not, they're not exactly equipped to do what they're trying to do, and that's why we can see this comedy of failures every day that we turn on the news of something being botched or some way the country being hurt due to incompetence.
I think it's
So
hard
I
it's hard to defeat an anti-democratic movement with democracy, you know?
well I don't think so. I think that it's fueled by populism, this wave, right? That's how they got into power. And so I think that if that populism wave turns against them, that'll disempower them electorally. Now, we could win every election and they could try to stay in power through a military coup or something like they did on January 6th. I guess it wasn't a military coup on January 6th. It was a different kind of coup, a paramilitary coup maybe. Um, there's always that possibility, but again, that's forcing them into a more extreme position because they've lost ground, right? The whole time we're taking ground from them and making their movement more reprehensible. Uh, you know, more we're making people see more and more why it should be abandoned. And eventually it gets to the point where there's 340 million people in this country and there's like 2 million people in the military. It's not like they can control the country. If the country becomes too lawless and too disorderly, and I think this is another reason why we can't have like a a rebel alliance in America because America is too diffuse, and we're not going to have like enough leftist or revolutionary extremists or whatever join up on one side to overthrow the government. That to me is just fantasy. I don't think that would ever happen. Um,
I wouldn't even
and
want to
and I
see
think
that.
that
That would be fucking cringe.
yeah, well, who knows? We saw them try to do it. We saw their version of that.
Ours would be even
So
worse, dude.
and it was cringe. I don't think so. I don't know.
It'd be a bunch of
I
blue
don't know. It
hairs.
depends. No, that's silly. It's very silly to pretend like blue hairs are representative of the left in any way. Like these social justice warriors on college campuses are in any way an adequate representation of Western liberalism,
They seem to be
which
a
is what
very vocal segment.
Really? Like still? Like who even thinks about that? Like what year is it? Is it 2016? Like who's thinking about blue-haired college kids?
I
When's the
mean,
last time a blue-haired college kid did anything?
I didn't see a lot of blue
Yeah.
hairs at the hands off protests. That's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was at No Kings this summer.
Yeah.
Everyone was out there. Every every person, every type of person, all ages, all races, everyone was out in the streets. It was pretty extraordinary, like to see this solidarity amongst Americans who just hate the fascist takeover of their country. That's not a niche college thing. That's ordinary citizens in such a great number taking to the streets against this oppression, I guess. So public opinion is already shifting, and we can see that reflected in the polls too, that they do with Trump's approval. So we're already winning. This is the thing too. We're already winning now, and the tide has been shifting. It's going to continue to shift. Charlie Kirk, I don't think it really affects things one way or another. I don't think one assassination is going to change the way that the movement is shifting. And I don't think that Trump's assassination did either. I think that things were already heading away from Biden, and they were since really the genocide in some small part. But it was a snowball thing where more and more people became discontent with that administration because of the worsening economic system globally. And what the vote for Trump was just a vote of no confidence in Biden's economic handling. And now we're back to so there was a moment where things were shifting that way anyways, and had been for years too because of the Rogan sphere and because of the social media campaign and everything for Trump. Uh, Now we're swinging back. It's become uncool to listen to Joe Rogan. It's become uh, these people are seen as the fascists that they are. It's become uncool to not support immigrants, and we can see that borne out in the polls too, where Trump's strongest issues going into office this time around were immigration and the economy, and now he's down on both of those. So it's already happening. That part of it's already happening. The electoralism is the next battle. And there may be moments where we have to resist. I don't know if they start, sending the military in again to street. Like, what are they going to do? They can't round up every American. You know, they're going to have to start black bagging people little by little. They can't black bag 300 million people. Um, I just think their days are numbered no matter what, in some way or another. And there's nothing they can do to stop that, really.
I guess I
America is too big.
see we've got this thing where it seems like, we might take a step forward every now and then, but we keep slipping further and further and further down the hole. And so when you talk about
What do you
the
mean?
idea of, well, ever since, you know, basically ever since World War II, when we had all the
No,
advantages.
we've had a lot of successes since then. We had the New Deal during that era. We had the Civil Rights Act. We had a ton of labor reform. So there were things that happened. It really is since the 80s that things have been moving backwards. And that's only in the economic way. So yeah, well, I know that's why the thing about Charlie, it's like they always end in some violent, terrible way. What's the longest lasting fascist regime? Like Italy, probably was around like what, like 10 years more than Hitler. So
It depends on what you mean by
Spain maybe.
fascist regime, you know.
Fascist Spain was around from what, the like 30s to the when did fascist Spain end? Was it the 70s, or
It was the
I guess
seven.
that would be the
It was
longest.
40 years. It was like 35 to 75.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess 40 years probably is the most longest running fascist regime. Um, and I mean, definitional fascism, not like, a king is a fascist, not like that. I think monarchy and fascism are very different um, styles of government, and I think that monarchy, like democracy, has within it, if it's around long enough, it'll create these social pressures inside of its citizenry to maintain its order, kind of. and those things can't be done away with through revolution. It takes like a long process um of like undoing them through procedural ways. And I think that a fascist regime is different, and that it doesn't have the ability to keep that longevity stranglehold on its society for a long enough time to really change the culture of the people for like for multiple generations, right? Is what I'm talking about. Um, I don't think there's ever been someone who it's like a fascist regime has never lasted longer than a generation and a half, right? So these things always kind of fizzle out, and
But
I think
let's
that we're seeing
say,
that with
yeah, since
yeah.
since the Civil Rights Act, because yes, I will admit that was a pretty big deal. Since then, it just feels like we've been
Well, we've had a lot of other
going
gains
down the
too, right?
hole.
So we had gains in labor laws, we had gains in social movements, we had marriage equality, we had a lot of advancements for gay rights in that time. And that's including since the 80s. I mean, we've had expansions under healthcare since then. Healthcare has actually gotten a lot better since that time. So so there are gains that we have made since then. They're just not as sweeping as they were prior to that. There hasn't been something as sweeping as the New Deal or the Civil Rights Act. But that doesn't mean there can't be. And like Joe Biden was actually of our lifetime probably the greatest president, um, in terms of the policies that he actually passed, in terms of providing healthcare to the most people, in terms of his rulings at his NLRB board for labor rights, in terms of labor enrollment. So there were a lot of things that Joe Biden did much better than Obama, much better than Bill Clinton. So we are making progress, and we were making progress. Now with this administration, we've been set way back in a lot of areas, but you know,
Do you
who
think
knows how long it'll take
overall,
to undo.
do you think overall the progress balances out the problems?
No, I think if you look at America from when it was founded 250 years ago to today, we've made massive strides towards the progress that I want to see. Uh, we've we've ended slavery, right? That's a big thing. We've stopped having, for the most part, until recently, we stopped doing genocide and imperialism
Well,
as
let's
a
talk about
foreign policy.
since Lyndon B. Johnson, right?
Hmm.
Do you
Yeah,
think
yeah. So I
that
do
our
still feel, yeah. So again, I do think like there have since I would say since the 80s, so a little further than Lyndon B. Johnson, there have been significant setbacks, but I don't think that it's been set back so much that it's like that there's ever been like a better time to really be like for this country really, and overall like in terms of positive developments, in terms of like you're less likely to die of a violent crime now than you are ever in history, right, in this country. So like there's so many things like quality of life things we have made improvements on, and that we continue to make improvements on, and that show this system of government, this democracy with its infrastructure and with its checks and balances can work and can provide for people the ideal that it tries to. And it does get better and better. If you look at equity under the law too, like look, during during the 60s, look at how black people were tried in courts. Denied certain basic rights, denied the right to vote without passing these insane literacy tests. Like there were so many ways that people were basically legislated out of having representation in the government, and now they do, or at least more of it. So I do think like these are positive directions we're moving in.
what
I
about
think that yeah, yeah, go ahead.
all right, what about the sustainability issues on just a global resource scale with climate change is the main example. What about that kind of stuff? How is that factor into the
Yeah,
picture?
so I mean, sure. So I mean that overall is worse, but I don't really look at that as a failure specifically of like America. It's more of like a global issue and an issue with unfettered, unrestrained corporate crony capitalism. Um, we do have ideas on how to fight against that. Things that steps that we could take if we wanted to try to stop doing the damage, triage to reverse the damage. Um, there are steps we can take, and there are ways we can transform our energy to get off of, you know, more to get on more sustainable energy sources, cleaner energy sources. So, what you bring up, there are two separate issues, right? There's the issue of climate change, which is an environmental issue, and there's the issue of running out of resources, which is kind of an environmental issue also, but more of an energy and economic issue. And I think that like both of those, at least that second issue, is very solvable. I think that we can solve that by nationalizing a lot of industries and a lot of the way that like the oil industry, for example, the AI industry. There are ways that we can kind of regulate the most uh, pollutant polluting industries like AI, for example, that's gonna eat up all our resources and all our energy like before any other technology. There are ways we can regulate and fight against that. The environmental issue, again, like what that is an issue of agency capture. That's an issue of money in our political system that makes it so that instead of your representatives representing you and what's good for you and what's good for the world and the country, they represent what's good for a corporation or what's good for a billionaire. And what's good for a corporation or a billionaire is always going to be to exploit you for as much as they can with as little care to the damage they do, and to try not to be held responsible for it. And so, as long as we have these corrupting forces in our government, as long as we allow these energy corporations to lobby our government, then we're going to have that issue. So, that's something that's probably a little more complicated to solve than one term, but I think that there are solutions and we can make progress towards that. And that is something that that would take more than just the country, but if we on a global, uh, together on a global perspective come together, that's something that we can solve probably.
And
And we were making strides towards that.
do you think that's likely to happen?
No, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not really a doomer in the sense that I think that this is like I see the end of this, right? Like I see that this takeover that's happening, this dark age that's happening, isn't permanent because nothing in the world is permanent. Everything changes, and I think that if we seize that moment and if we ride this properly, if we turn this moment properly, this catastrophe into a real eye-opening learning moment, and the country gets woke about all these things, and there's actual populist will to do something about it, and that's not going to last, but for the next couple years, that can be used to make certain advantages and certain gains in the government and to reinforce the institutions that we have and to provide more of a technocratic way of running these certain bureaus and administrations instead of a crony capitalist way. I think that there's a lot of damage that can be reversed. And I see a path for that. So it's not some fantasy. I don't know how likely that is. I know that right now we're in this dark age where it seems like the bad guys always win, but they're all going to die eventually. I don't know how long it'll last. It's like you just got to outlast it.
I don't know. Oswald Mosley's grandson is looking pretty young and spry. I don't have a lot of faith.
Sure.
But sure, I
But
mean, yeah,
yeah, man.
the whole global optimism thing. I mean, that's a big thing that John Green talks about. And I remember going back like 11 years ago, or even almost 12 at this point, him making a video talking about how 2014 is going to be the greatest year of all time. And he lists all of these ways that 2013 was the best year ever in human history. And he makes a really compelling case that when you look at it globally, like epidemiology and a whole bunch of stuff. Like things do improve, just in ways that a lot of people don't notice.
Yeah, definitely. You can't undo human progress. You can set it back, but it's like you can't kill an idea, right? And you can't when knowledge is discovered, you can it's not like it's only going to be discovered once, right? Like even if you somehow manage to completely eradicate some discovery or some like scientific understanding of something or whatever, that someone else is going to discover that in due time given the proper conditions. And I just think like this is why this conservatism, the idea that like we can ban, trans people or ban porn or ban this or ban that, and it's like this idea that prohibition is somehow going to get rid of alcoholism. Like it's just a self-defeatist kind of philosophy on life that you can oppress your way into utopia. It's never going to happen. Um, and ultimately, these regimes are never about that. They're always about their own power, which is no, the funny stuff. We watched a little bit of funny stuff. The funny stuff is coming up soon. Sorry guys. We'll get back to the videos pretty soon. I've got EDP and shit. Don't worry. I'm gonna go for like another hour probably, maybe a little longer. But yeah, yeah. So but like I don't remember what I was saying, but yeah, you can
Yeah, well,
scientific progress is gonna happen. It's I don't think we can undo that.
that's
It's too global.
the fundamental reason why I call myself a progressive is the maxim that modern problems require modern solutions, and I think it always, almost always, holds true that trying to turn back the clock never actually accomplishes the goal you want to accomplish by doing so.
Yeah, and it's impossible to do. You can't do it. It's you can't go back in time. You can't undo things that have happened. It's
Yeah, I mean
completely self-defeatist.
the Bourbon Restoration in France is a perfect example. I mean the most mythic archetype of an example of that did not work.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, like, Amish people are another example of like how, a society like that is never going to flourish, right? Like you can't like you're the someone who's an Amish society, right? A society of Luddites or whatever is never going to solve the world's problems, and it's never going to bring into existence a better world. Um, yeah, I just feel like there's always going to be progress. But all right, guys, we can probably move on. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about in that area?
No, that's okay. We can move on.
Sure. They want to see me react to some lol cow shit, I think, some EDP shit. I don't really know much about him, so you guys are gonna have to answer all my questions, I guess.